Today we have Christine joining us talking about all things management consulting versus tech consulting. And I know this is a really hot topic. So Christine, do you want to go and give a quick introduction about yourself?
Hello everyone, my name is Christine. I'm based out of New York, not the UK. So I actually am a technology consultant at Accenture, specializing in Workday financial software implementations. My YouTube channel focuses on technology consulting, and the question we always get is the difference between management consulting and technology consulting. So kind of like both of our roles are very similar, kind of like in the middle. So I think we can actually be a pretty good, I think we can actually I think we can actually answer this pretty well for you guys. So for me, I actually get the question a lot because what I would say is my particular role, there's management consultants and technology consultants doing the same exact thing. So there is something called functional consulting and technical consulting. My boyfriend actually is a technology consultant in the technical side where he does a lot of coding and a lot of integrations and data and whatnot. For me, I'm more in the functional side where I gather business requirements and really talk to clients and learn about their business. Like actually for this kind of role, you need to understand business before you can even do this particular role. So there's two separate roles, but the functional consultant, which is what I am, actually is the one that I share a lot with management consultants.
Okay, that's really interesting because in the UK, I think technology consulting is definitely that. You have the business side of technology, which functional consulting is exactly what you mentioned, and definitely the more technical side in terms of development and so forth. But we also, I would say, kind of one thing that brings all together of that is digital consulting. So, you know, for technology consulting, a lot of the time is looking at systems and the back-end processes, whereas, you know, digital consulting is definitely looking at much more of the front-end facing stuff. So you're building apps, you're developing websites, you know, you're defining what the customer experience is both online and offline, and it's a really incredible and probably the most fast-paced consulting, I would say, right now. I think for McKinsey, I read this stat where 40% of McKinsey's practice is now all to do with the digital consulting arm. And definitely, I would say, you know, for Deloitte and maybe even Accenture is one of the most biggest driving revenue drivers there are today. So, you know, for management consulting, would you say there is any other specific overlays that you have with technology consulting?
So like when you mentioned digital consulting, actually at Accenture, we have its separate practice. It's not, well, now that I think about it, they kind of remove the digital practice because it's kind of all across all of them. So that's kind of what I would say for that. We have like an interactive practice though that is similar to what you're talking about, more on the marketing front facing side. But I would say, yeah, like definitely we work with management consultants in our projects, and even when it comes to digital, like that's all across the practice. It's not necessarily in a particular area like tech.
Oh, okay, fine. Oh, okay, I got you. I think at Deloitte it's the same thing. We do have like a technology practice, but we also have a digital practice. But my unpopular opinion is that everyone is a technology consultant, be it if you sit in strategy, be it if you sit in operations, and that's essentially, by the way, management consulting in the USA, they basically define it as strategy and operations, whereas in the UK, I would say that management consulting is everything. So strategy, operations, technology. But back to my unpopular opinion, like everyone is a technology consultant. You cannot do strategy without having some sort of driver from technology. You cannot do operations without some sort of technical knowledge as well, I would say, even if it's in terms of technologies and systems inside of the organization. So I think I think in some way today, you know, the whole functional piece you mentioned, there is some sort of that across every single part of consulting, in my opinion.
I completely agree. Like even when it comes to Accenture, I'm like, technically we are a technology consulting firm.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah. But everyone that's in management consulting or strategy consulting, before they even come in, they're basically going to be looking at, why are you interested in Accenture? If you are interested in tech, okay, that makes sense. But nowadays, like, if you are trying to figure out what's your next digital strategy to kind of re-engage customers, it's probably gonna be tech. So it's there. It's like, it's not necessarily kind of segued or siloed into a particular area in tech.
Yeah, totally. And I think, you know, rather than differentiating, we always find this where it's strategy versus operations versus technology. In my opinion, it should just be like strategy versus implementation. I think that's just so much easier and it's just so much more clear. I feel like we put the whole strategy versus ops versus tech to give some sort of, you know, prestige to different parts, but that really isn't true in my opinion. In terms of projects, in tech consulting, what specific projects do you get to do?
So the projects I will definitely say is, I would say it's different because like depending on the actual pipeline of the project. So for example, at least at Accenture,
yeah.
It's actually more of like the management consultants kind of go in and say like, okay, you're going to do like product selection, or this is what you need to do. And then it goes over the technology consultants for execution. So the implementation of that solution. Okay. So for that, that's actually following more of like the product standard life cycle. It's not necessarily following like any random one out there. It could be agile, it could be waterfall, it could be actually like the whole software's own style, because like for example, I do Workday, we have our own timeline that Workday does. We don't actually just do our own. And a lot of times we do adapt to what like let's say our client's IT team, if they want to do agile, we'll do agile. We'll use Jira or something like that. So a lot of it's really just adapting based on what the client is it's like basically similar to or comfortable with, and then also working with the technology. And there, like the standard one I follow at least is plan, build, test, and then oh my god, plan,
Showing
build.
your showing your age.
I have it in my head. I just need to say it. Plan, build, test. Okay, I gotta do it this way now. Plan, build, test, and deploy. So those are the 4 main things that I personally do for my projects. And it's different across all projects, all technology, all clients. So 2 separate projects will never be treated the same.
Okay, so you're saying that in tech consulting, you guys don't define who the vendors are, or you don't go through the whole vendor selection process?
We could, but that's mostly, at least at Accenture, mostly for the management consultants to do the product selection to see what works best for their business. For at least in technology, for my part, it's more on the delivery of that service. And it's kind of like what consulting firms like to do with the pipeline to make sure that at least like once we select it, you do it, and then we keep on going, we provide the support after that. So like the whole way we want to hold your hand.
That's really interesting, because at Deloitte, I would definitely say that we definitely, in technology consulting, you're doing a lot of the technology strategy where you're defining what the technology area and the operating model looks like. But then you also get down into, you know, what systems that they should be using and go through a vendor selection process as well. So I think, definitely think, you know, at Deloitte, strategy ends up being like, you know, customer strategy, digital strategy, you know, just basic corporate business strategy, where you're kind of defining which products, which markets you want to go into. And then operations consulting is split into 3 types. So that's supply chain. So understanding, you know, logistics and so forth around the supply chain. You also got everything to do with the finance function, to robotics within that as well. And you also have human capital, which is all about the culture and defining what the organization, you know, where people should sit and so forth. So anything within that, they can definitely be choosing, you know, obviously the systems within that, but also in technology, for Deloitte, anything to do with, you know, the technology area, the IT organization part. So is essentially under the remit of technology consulting. So that could be, again, technology strategy. That again could be, you know, the customer experience within, or the employee experience within the IT organization. Even essentially, you guys really split it in terms of, you know, the delivery of, the stages of a project. Whereas I think in Deloitte, we kind of split it by the area or the function of the client we're working with. So, you know, operations is with the supply chain, or, you know, the operations teams and so forth. In the technology consulting, it's all to do with just the IT organization. Obviously, you're going to have some sort of, you know, touch points with the business side. So that's really interesting, because just the way that Deloitte and Accenture work is very different. And that just shows to everyone watching that, you know, technology consulting is very different depending on which firm you go into. So it's really important that you research what type of technology consulting you are going to be doing in each firm.
I actually do think that we do go by those particular areas. The only thing is that depending on the actual consultants that are on the project, yes, it will be mostly technology, and then we'll have some management consultants on there. However, like for example, I do more ERP systems, enterprise resource planning software. So we do have to work with each individual group on the client side. So like HR would be more on the HCM part. I work with specifically in the financial section. So I work with the accounting team, their procurement team, their supplier team, the entire area where like there's money moving. So I work with many different teams on the same software, but it's not really like working on specific software for each individual area. It's because what we do is like over encompassing all those areas.
Okay, I got you. So in terms of, like you mentioned, like, you know, you're working on ERP systems and so forth, do you think that to break into that specific area, or, you know, specifically technology consulting, let's say, you need specific skills to break into it? Or do you think you can just learn on the job?
If you are starting out right after school, like in this case, university, actually, like they don't really expect you to know anything. They do expect you to know something about tech, because then it's like, why are you interested in this role to begin with? But they want to see that you have the soft skills, like the skills that they would look for in a consultant. And most consulting firms, at least the big ones, they all have training programs anyway. So they want to make sure you're on the same page as everyone else. You get the certifications because these certifications are expensive. Mine is like $3,000, 3,000 USD for just one. And I have like 8 right now. So think about how much that would be out of your own pocket. So the consulting firm is going to be paying for it. We have a lot of resources available as well, so that way you don't fail. And then that's just like basically what we would expect, just to have the soft skills and be able to learn that way. We can learn anything that we have.
Yeah, I think in the UK it's very similar in terms of you don't really need to do a course to get in. They are really looking just for the passion and the potential. But we definitely do upskill people when you get in. So, each course that you end up doing, I think you also get paid more because, it's like an extra hard skill under your bucket, which not a lot of people have. So you're definitely going to be upskilling yourself, either in development, in, Salesforce, in SAP and so forth. So the specific systems that we do specific courses on. And I definitely do think that people get paid more. I wish I'd do one of these courses. I should definitely do one just to get paid more.
Do you guys get an increase in the base pay from that? Or is it like a little bonus? Because we have hot skills bonus.
Yeah, I think it's a little bonus that we get as well.
Okay.
So like if you do an Adobe course, for instance, you get paid more, which is fair because, you've specialized yourself from the other people in the firm. But no, I wish I could get that skills bonus just for soft skills as well. I mean, soft skills count as much as hard skills, especially in tech consulting, I think, because one of the interesting things in tech consulting is that you end up finding people who are just really technical or who are just really businessy. And there's not a lot of people who do the overlap in terms of business of technology and understand the technical side of it. So if you can do both, and that means honing in the soft skills as well as some of the hard skills, you are definitely going to be at a major advantage already if you can do that, I would say.
So like even at Accenture, actually, like my story when how I even got into Workday Financials, everyone asked me, how did I even get in? Why did I choose it? I did not.
Yeah.
It's because I had that really specific skill set where I have both technical and business. They were like, oh, you're perfect because you can be the functional consultant to understand the technology and also be able to communicate with the business owners and understand their business.
Yeah, no, totally. And when people say to me like, oh, the skills you need for management consulting, do they differ to tech consulting? I would say they are pretty much similar in terms of soft skills. The only difference I would say is that you're probably learning more hard skills for management consulting in terms of PowerPoint and Excel, whereas for technology consulting, you're probably learning much more around technical skills. So I think that's the key difference, but otherwise it's really the same. And in terms of your day-to-day work, what do you end up doing day to day? Can you just explain to a few of the people watching what a typical day, which I know there's no typical day, is?
I mean, like everyone's gonna say it depends, but I'm gonna try my best. So like for when I talk to many other technology consultants, it really does depend. And it depends on even if you're doing the same exact thing. I do Workday Financials. If I have another coworker that is doing Workday Financials, could be completely different. But it does, like I mentioned before, by project stages differ from there. So on the planning stage, that's actually the time when we're really on site a lot more because we want to build that relationship with the customer or the client in this case. And that way we really want to see like, how do you even do your business to begin with? We don't even introduce technology at that time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Then later on, we do introduce the technology. We kind of like customize it already at that point to show them this is how we envision it based off of what you told us. And then around the build, that's where we really do exactly what they want. Testing, that's where actually we're back on site and we do a lot more like, it's almost like we're a TA. By the way, in the UK, do they call it TA? It's like the teacher's assistant.
Oh, okay, fine. Yeah, but I think we call it too. We call that as well, but not in consulting. Like actually in school, you get called them teachers.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I got you.
Okay. Yeah, so when it comes to being like when it comes to testing, we actually are on site being like the TA or like the teacher's assistant for testing, where we're basically watching them go through the testing, debugging, helping them out, like trying to teach them how to use the software because this is really the time for them to get their hands wet. Deploying, that's actually when sometimes it could be a mix of on-site or being at home. We work from home primarily for technology consultants, and that's where we take their data, we try to convert it, put it into the system, and then run through a lot of quality assurance. And then on the typically leading up to the go live, that's actually when we're back on site. So we are not like what most management consultants do where they're on site all the time. We're actually either mostly working from home or we go to our home office. In this case, mine is New York. And then we also go on site for times that we're needed. It depends on the project because I do know some of my coworkers are on there 24/7 because our client can actually afford it. even though they don't need to be there. But that's just like how it could be depending.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's very dependent on the client, and I've seen this type of model happening a little bit more, where essentially, especially when you're doing these software projects like you mentioned, the dev teams end up being like from Romania or from India, just because they're so much cheaper. But you'll end up having a resource from, let's say, America or the UK, the actual office you're working with, who are leading those teams, and they end up being like a tech lead or delivery lead, and these guys are on site every day, or they may actually be working with the dev team or have a counterpart with the dev team. So seeing some of these models happening a little bit more as well. But I do feel that, with coronavirus, I don't think we are expected to be on site now every single day. I think we've shown that we can work from home. In the UK, I think clients do like us. So it actually works like this. So strategy consulting projects, most of the time, I would say you don't need to be in the office. Whereas, you'd end up going to the client site for workshops and so forth, but you don't have to be there. Whereas in tech consulting and operations consulting, I would say majority of the time I have seen a lot of these people working on client site as well. And I think it's just the culture in the UK. Strategy consulting ends up a lot of the time being in your in your work office and not on client site. And operations technology consulting, a lot of people end up usually being out on client site. And I find that really interesting, because in the USA it doesn't sound like that happens. It sounds like you guys are working from home a lot of the time.
Well, I mean, like even before coronavirus, that's actually what we were doing. But management consultants, I know they're definitely on set a lot more. And again, like I mentioned, functional consultants kind of share the same role as management consultants in tech projects. So we can actually be the ones that go on site. However, technical consultants, let's say for example, my boyfriend has never been on site, and he's been at Accenture for about 1.5 years. And I know people that have never been on site for their entire career. Sometimes they do if there's like a fire to put out, but most of the time you're only there as needed, and mostly that's the functional consultants that do that.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, because I think it really does differ in the UK. So in terms of day-to-day work, I do think it's actually, again, very similar in terms of the types of things you're doing. So you will be doing stakeholder interviews, you will be doing workshops, no matter if you're management consulting or in tech consulting. But I do think you're obviously going to have much more specific things, such as coding, right? Which you're going to have in tech consulting, which you probably won't be doing in management consulting or strategy consulting. And I definitely do think that a lot of the time you end up doing and gaining the same skills which I've mentioned, like stakeholder management, communication, leadership. And I don't think that if you do tech consulting or management consulting, it's going to not lead you to the same places. I think, I've seen people who've gone through tech consulting become CTOs and they switch to becoming a CEO. It still happens. So don't feel like, one between the other is better. It's more like, what is your preference? What do you like doing? I think that's something that's really important before you decide to choose which one to do. And I'm really curious in terms of, choosing which one to do. Christine, which one, why did you choose tech consulting over management consulting?
Yeah, so actually the funny thing is when I applied for Accenture, I applied for both.
Oh, wow. Okay, amazing.
Yeah, they thought my application was more suited for tech consulting. But then again, like because I applied for both, I do have very similar skill sets to both anyways. And that's why I was in functional consulting. But one of the main reasons why they liked where I was and put me in tech consulting is because I had that tech experience and technical skills. So from that alone, that's why they're like, okay, yeah, you're more suited for tech consulting. The irony though is that like, even though it is a different structure at Accenture, where even though we share the same role, the management consultants are in a different structure and we're under a different structure, at least like from my knowledge, management consultants focus more on industry.
Okay.
Technology consultants focus more on skill. So in my case, it's Workday Financials. I don't actually stick to any particular industry, but in management consulting, they do.
Okay, I think in the UK, it's usually by industry, no matter where you sit. But again, you can still be a generalist. Like I do think I'm a generalist. I like doing more private sector work, but I don't see the technology consultants have to have a specific skill. I think what happens is that your operating unit ends up being a skill, so like SAP or like Salesforce, and that's your your operating unit. But these people can choose to be in a specific industry if they want to. And I think, as you go a bit more senior, you end up having to choose which industry you want to align to or the type of work, like you mentioned. But I don't think it's not really enforced in the UK, I would say. In terms of people trying to choose between management, tech consulting, I think I hear people say this really obviously, where if you're interested in doing the work, a lot of the time, it ends up being technology consulting. But if you're interested in just thinking, a lot of the time it ends up being, strategy consulting. And by the way, I also do think you do a little bit of the work as well in terms of the doers end up being in operations consulting in the UK. So strategy consulting, especially if you want to do the more of the thinking work, and operations technology consulting if you want to do much more of the doing work. But do not forget that even in technology consulting, you do have technology strategy and technology operating models and that type of stuff where essentially you are doing some of the thinking work. So again, it's really blurred. There is no one structure across any firm, but make sure that you also have that in mind in terms of do you get satisfaction by doing stuff and seeing the end results and being part of it and knowing that you actually helped to build that, or do you just kind of going through interviews, understanding insights, and then maybe just writing a vision or a way that the organization should be organized and so forth?
There's actually one key difference now I think about it, is that in management consulting, you can make a suggestion or recommendation and then they may or may not take it. They might just move on. In technology consulting, you're already strapped down with the solution. You have to do it. It's just a matter of how to approach it. So that's kind of one reason why I really like technology consulting, because whatever you're doing, it's tangible. You're actually doing something that they'll be using for the next 30 plus years, unless they change your technology, of course. But that's one thing that you definitely you made an actual impact on that client.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think that's what's really rewarding, I find, about consulting, is that you can actually see the impact. So, I do a blurred line between, in your words, management and technology consulting. So I think I get kind of the best of both worlds in a way. But yeah, and in terms of maybe this is the final question for everyone who's listening, what do they need to do to prepare for tech consulting, would you say?
Yeah, so for technology consulting, if you are still in school, I would definitely get involved in all of this actual organizations. Even though you may be interested in tech, you still want to show or be able to exhibit your soft skills. I think that's so crucial. I know so many computer science majors and engineering majors that come in saying, I only do tech consulting, but they don't have anything to show that they can be a consultant. That's the part that they care more about the most. If you have the technical capacity, you can always be trained to do that. If you're on the business side and you want to go into technology, you want to show something about technology, either than maybe you're concentrating or focusing on a particular area within business. In my case, that was management information systems. Or maybe you took an internship that is for example, product management or data analytics, something that's kind of in between, but not necessarily fully technical like coding. And also just be able to network a lot. I think everyone's going to say this about consulting. You have to network. Make sure you network with people in technology consulting and all the firms you're interested in, because like we said, it's different across all these different firms. So knowing really what maybe they're focusing on, that can actually really help you see what particular skills you may want to focus on. So right now, because of the pandemic, most people are focusing on cloud, ding, ding, ding. So you may want to do something more in cloud, like for example, Salesforce. There's a lot of resources out there that are completely free. And lastly, follow me, subscribe to me. My content is all about technology consulting. So definitely, if you want to learn more about that, definitely check me out.
No, for sure. I think you have some incredible advice and resources to help anyone in terms of if they want to get into tech consulting. So definitely do check out Christine. She's also got this pro bono consulting program going on. So if you're struggling to find experience right now, definitely go check her out. Go join the program and definitely do get some of those pro bono consulting experience to show your passion and to convey, the potential that you have for tech consulting as well. And I think that's really important in terms of showing your passion, because I think a lot of people today, do show that, but a lot of people don't have anything to show it. So you need to either, start a side hustle maybe, or, a side project where you're just writing about some thoughts around tech consulting potentially, or anything to do with data analytics or whatever you're interested in. Because I think when you have this portfolio of work, you need to communicate it. And that's when people are going to be drawn to you. So rather than kind of searching for all those opportunities, people are going to be approaching you because you are putting your work out there, I would say. I'm not sure what you think, Christine.
Yeah, I think definitely building your personal brand is also crucial too. Even if you want to be known as the techie, you still want to be known as someone that's a sociable person. So what people have been doing, they go on LinkedIn, they kind of post about what they've been doing and also helping people out. So these pro bono technology consulting programs, I really recommend, because that way you can really put your skills to work and really have that client-facing skills. And mostly, we did mention this in a lot of our videos, that case interviews is all crucial. So when they do the case interviews, you want to see the client-facing skills too, not just that you answered it correctly, if there is even a correct way, and that you approached it correct, but you also want to make sure to show your client-facing skills.
And in terms of the case interviews you mentioned, in the USA, what would you define as a technology case interview?
Yeah, so actually the main difference I'm seeing, and ironically, my very first technology consulting case interview was my first one that got me the job at Accenture.
Oh, wow.
That's when I noticed it was a difference because I prepared for management consulting. Management consulting, think about like profit tree, think about like market segmentation, all that very business stuff that you think about. Technology is actually focused on, okay, execution, risks, how to actually do it. How would you envision how this entire process would be? And it's not just as simple as like, this is a solution I provide. It's really like, okay, with that solution, how do you actually envision the entire process from start to end? And sometimes it really does differ because I did see there was like a case interview where they actually gave you a software to work with for 30 minutes. You demo to the team, whoever you were interviewing with, and then they'll ask you questions. So that actually was real life experience that I typically do on a normal day basis. So it is so fluid in terms of what kind of cases you can expect. Some of them could be very technical, and then they expect you to actually present everything that you were thinking about.
That sounds tough. And I'm glad I didn't have to do one of those technology case interviews here in the UK. It's so much more chill, I find, in the USA. But no, thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciated it. And I'm sure everyone here has heard and learnt something around tech consulting. And hopefully you are able to understand if tech consulting is for you. And if you want any more videos on tech consulting, definitely go check out Christine. She has an amazing channel. I mentioned it before, but you know, I actually think it's really valuable. Do you want to give any last words, Christine?
So even if you are not interested in my, like, for example, my YouTube channel, I highly recommend joining the Technology Consulting Community Facebook group that I have. So check that out. It has a lot of resources in terms of how to do tech case interviews, specifically for tech. Has the Pro Bono program. It has a lot of like actual people you can meet at this particular point of time. There's 1,500 people all across the world in 70 plus countries, all interested in technology consulting. They are either in the industry right now or that they're interested in doing it. So you can actually meet so many people. We do weekly Clubhouse events, and we also have monthly events, like specifically, like let's say for example in February we have Intro to UX workshop. So we have so many things out there that are completely free, and definitely check that out if you're interested in learning more and meeting more people.
Awesome. No, thank you so much for joining, and we will see you next week. Bye, everyone.